Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Black History Month conference hosted by MS Focus, the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, made possible with support from Genentech. I am your host, Kimani Hendricks, Multimedia Communications Coordinator for the Foundation, and today we are joined by Dawnia Baynes, Nick Overton, and I believe that Erik Nelson has just arrived, so we're glad to have you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to share the MS experience from the Black perspective. So before we get started, I did want to let everybody who is watching us know that if you have a question or a comment at some point during the presentation, you can either type them into the Q&A or the chat box on Zoom. You can also type it into the comment section if you're watching the Facebook live stream. And if you do want to ask a question to any of the panelists directly, you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom as well, and we'll unmute you and all that good stuff. So I did want to have everybody kind of just introduce themselves a little bit. We'll start with Dawnia, then Nick and Erik. You can just tell us a little bit about yourselves and we'll jump right in.
Sure. So hello, my name is Dawnia. I was diagnosed with MS in 2006. I am also a caregiver for my father, who I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting, and my father was diagnosed with primary progressive. I live in Compton, California, and my dad is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So that's a fun, but a lot of telephone and all that. So my day starts at 5 a.m. and who knows when it'll end. I am also a small group leader, or I shouldn't say small group, but a self-help group leader for people diagnosed with MS in their 20s up to their early 50s. And then also, which this one is where my heart really, really is a support self-help group for people diagnosed 25 and under with MS, and then also a group for their parents. Because parents need support too. So I have the privilege of being diagnosed and also a caregiver. And I do, I'm an activist for MS, but I'll do anything MS related. So that's me.
You can start, Nick. Go ahead. We can't hear you. Am I the only one? We can't hear him?
I don't hear him.
No.
It was working fine and then it went
It
away.
was. We'll come back to you, Nick. Just bear with us. Erik, do you want to start? Introduce yourself.
Yes. First I want to thank you for having me on. And I want to thank the MS Foundation as well. My name is Erik Nelson. I am the pastor of Restoring Health Ministries. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis back in 2014. And I started an MS support group that turned into a ministry for people that are diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So we now we haven't moved on from MS, but we now have opened up our ministry to other people, diagnosed with other issues. And but we have about 95% people that are diagnosed with MS that are in our group. And I'm just so excited and glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. Thank you, guys. Nick, you want to give it another go?
Guys hear me now?
Yes, it's back.
Yes.
I'm so sorry about that. Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Overton. I am 35 years old, and I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS last year on January 30th. So this year is coming up just on my year mark. And I remember being diagnosed and just promising myself I would utilize that as the opportunity to advocate towards better inclusion into the MS diagnosis for everyone. So that's what I am doing here. I love to advocate.
We're going to get into that because I am really big on advocacy. But before we do, I did want to just add that obviously MS is kind of a one size fits all disease. Like I have never heard anybody say, well, this is what led up to my diagnosis and it being the same as another person. So everybody, it seems, has their own individual story. And I'm curious as to what each of yours are. I'm kind of going to switch it around a little bit. Let's go with Erik first, then Dawnia and Nick again.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
So what's your diagnosis story? So what led up to your getting diagnosed?
Wow. So all my life I've had symptoms that I did not know was MS related. I grew up playing sports. I grew up in the marching band, and through sports and through being in the band, I began to experience like the fatigue, the weakness in my legs, things like that. And I thought it was other things. I thought it was dehydration. I thought it was things like that. So when I became an adult, um, I started having issues with trigeminal neuralgia, things like that. And I thought I had everything under control, but I did not know that it was MS related. So what I did was I worked at a law firm for 22 years. And I also wanted to do a career change. So I um, wanted to become a personal fitness trainer. I wanted to help, young athletes get into shape using body weight exercises. So I was in the process of doing 1,000 push-ups a day. And so I managed to work up to 900 push-ups. And this particular day, I lost the balance and my left hand had given out and I fell on my face. So it happened like two or three times. And then I went to the emergency room that led me to get checked out. And later on, and like I said, August of 2014, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Dawnia?
So my story, and I think it was a little shorter because of my dad being diagnosed with MS, but in 2004, I was working at Kinko's, and I hope you know what Kinko's is, because when people say, I don't know what that is, I feel old. I'm like, I don't know Kinko's, but I would be walking and I felt like I was walking to the right. And I called my doctor. He set an appointment and he's like, you're walking straight. I don't know. And so he sent me to get a couple of tests, and one of the three tests was an MRI. Got the MRI results, meeting with a different doctor that was at the hospital where I did the MRI. And he's like, I don't see anything. Like, I don't see anything. And I'm like, well, my dad was diagnosed. He's like, oh, like that's what it is, And I'm like, no. It's like, because I'm too young. I think I was 24 at the time. And I'm like, so you don't get MS like that. So I ignored it. My symptoms went away. And then in 2006, my body went numb from my chest down. And my mom's like, and I was living in Atlanta. I lived there for like 12 and a half years. So I was diagnosed in Atlanta. And the emergency room, referred me to a neurologist. And then the neurologist took me to like 4 hours of testing. And I was just like, and even the person after I finished, she's like, tell your doctor don't ever do that again. And so when I went to him, it was he said it's consistent with MS. And so I was like, okay, but I didn't, unfortunately, stick to a treatment plan for MS. I was like, God's gonna heal me. I'm not taking medication. I'm not doing any of that. And so, in the beginning, I did not do any medication. Couple years later, I wound up getting on a medication because I wasn't being consistent with my treatment or with my, eating healthy, doing the natural way and all that. And so started a medication. I've gone through three. I actually wound up at one point going to Mexico for treatment and, wound up, it was great, but I couldn't afford it anymore. But, now I'm on my third medication and it's been amazing. And I'm grateful that I did the route that I did because it allowed me my physical to be a little different to where I'm on disability and was able to now be there for the younger people diagnosed with MS and walk them through the journey, which I call them my babies, and they call me their MS mama. So that's my journey, part of my story. So yeah.
Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, so my diagnosis story started last year. Well, it started late of 2022. My first symptom was my right leg went completely numb. I remember going to the ER to get checked out. Um, and unfortunately, at that time, I was misdiagnosed as sciatica. So I continued a round of steroids, oral steroids, to help the inflammation, thinking it was from the sciatica. I did 2 rounds of those, and it would continuously come back on and off. And between that, I was going through a very stressful time in my life. And during this time, I woke up and I lost about 90% of my vision in my left eye. And that ended me up in the ER again. And that is what led initially to my diagnosis of having MS, optic neuritis. Um, so, I did 3 rounds of IV steroids in the hospital. Um, I was lucky enough to have a very caring neurologist in the hospital. And unfortunately, he did not see patients outside of the hospital. So I went on a search for a great neurologist in my area. And luckily, I was able to find one. And that has been my continuation of my diagnosis story and how I've been impacted by MS. And even as, I used to work as a nurse majorly. Um, and it was different viewing things from a patient perspective for the first time in my life. And I think that was a challenge for me, but also a asset as well, being able to see both sides and interacting from the different side for the first time in my life. Um, and that is my MS story.
Now, I did want to ask, since you guys have been diagnosed, have you experienced any discrimination whatsoever within the healthcare system? Because I know that for a long time, it was thought by professionals that Black people didn't really get multiple sclerosis or that. So if we're describing these symptoms, even if it was something that may have sounded like multiple sclerosis, they were like, ah, well, it's not that because it's primarily Caucasian, middle-aged group of people. Nick, since you have not gone first yet, I want you to answer the question first, and then Dawnia, and then Erik.
Me personally, I've experienced discrimination in the healthcare system. And I've seen it from both sides as working as a nurse and as being a patient. I think some people do have that stigma in their mind that, this is only primarily a Caucasian disease, but we're finding out more that is, I believe African American women are most diagnosed now. with MS. And hopefully with that information, we can slowly try to change that perspective of doctors so they're more aware and more looking at that may being a diagnostic criteria for Black individuals that are coming in the office that are exhibiting these MS symptoms, so we can be diagnosed quicker with MS. And you know, there's a story that I'll never forget early on in my search for a neurologist, where I came into the office and I was describing to my neurologist at the time what I was going through pain wise. And her simple statement was to me, you know, I was telling her I was dealing with a lot of lower back pain and a lot of burning sensation down both my legs. And her only response to me was, "We don't prescribe narcotics here." And it was, you know, it was heartbreaking because I wasn't asking for narcotics. You know, I didn't even allude to that. I was simply telling her, "Look, I'm in a lot of pain that, you know, I know is not right, you know, and we have so many different medications nowadays. We have so many different therapies nowadays that, you know, I believe that we don't have to suffer in pain anymore." And I would have liked her response to be a little along the lines of like, "Well, where is your pain? You know, how bad is your pain? What does it feel like? You know," and go from there. So I knew from that point I needed to change a neurologist and find someone that was able to kind of see me more as a patient. You know, just being a healthcare provider myself, I believe we should treat patients like as if we were treating our own family.
Dawnia?
Yeah, so for me, I get to see it on both sides. Um, the for I am I like to really speak up for myself, and so I've had moments where certain treatments or opportunities were not presented to me, and I'm like, hold on, you know, let me, you know, I want to do this, but with my dad, I have to where he lives. It's very interesting, and so I have to constantly ask, you know, and also think to myself, like, are you doing this because he's Black, or is it, you know, he can't, you know, like it's actually something he can't get. And so I think the most recent that I've heard more from it happening to other people and me helping them with it is a friend of mine was not getting proper care because she was a Black woman with an accent. And so there were certain things that were not offered to her. And I'm like, actually, you can do this, or no, you should do that. So I just, you know, I think it's super important to communicate, you know, with people. And, you know, especially like for me, I would go over when I would go to an event or anything, like if I saw a Black person, I'm like, oh, um let me connect with them so that I can, sorry, you know, just so that we can be there for one another. And so yeah, I hate that we have to think like that. I hate that it's not just this is the care that you need. And you know, the thought, you know, of like how Nick was saying, like before Black people didn't get MS, I'm like, surprise, is me and my dad, you know, diagnosed. And I hate the question of does it run in your family? Because we will never know, because for years it was not an option, you know, for Black people. So I'm grateful I'm diagnosed now, because had it been, you know, 20, 30, 40 years ago, I'd probably still be in the process of being diagnosed.
So you know, I've had a similar thing happen to me. I want to say in December 2022, I was experiencing tingling sensations in both my legs and in my arms. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And so I went to the ER and they were like, okay, well, we don't see anything really. We can't help you. So we're going to refer you to a neurologist. So I went to a neurologist a couple of weeks later and they asked me, among all of the questions that they normally would when they are first seeing a patient, they were like, so is anybody in your family living with multiple sclerosis? And I was like, not to my knowledge. Like there's only but so much, our great grandparents and grandparents, some of them are still here, a lot of them are not. So it was something that I couldn't really accurately answer because my family history, for one, kind of scratched off with slavery and everything like that. So there are only but so many questions that we can answer. If it did run in my family, I don't know about it. So I really did. I just kind of wanted to interject that and throw that in there. I'm sorry, Eric. Didn't mean to cut you off, but
No
go
problem.
ahead, please.
Well, the experiences that I've had was I don't know if they were a little different. Um, so it started with me after I had a blood clot in both of my lungs. And so I was hospitalized. And it started where they didn't want me to come home. They were trying to put me in a nursing home because they thought that, well, I'm not saying they thought, I believe that their thought process is with MS, they're never going to get better. And so by them thinking that way, they treat you that way, like you're never going to get better. And so when it came to physical therapy, I felt as though that they treated me that, like you're never going to get better. I felt as though when it came to the healthcare system, they told me that my wife and I, we made too much money. So their quote unquote words were, we think that you guys should get a divorce so that you would be able to get the services that you need. That was what we've experienced on our end. Even when it came down to the what is that uh, the Part C of the Medicare benefits, they tried to talk me into getting the Part C of Medicare, and I've already had Part A and B. And so when they talked me into getting the Part C, I found out that um, all that did was to give me more copays, which equals more bills, more money coming out, going into their pockets. And so even when it comes to the healthcare system, I just feel like they don't really know or have an understanding of what MS looks like, or what people that are diagnosed with MS, what they go through and experience on a daily basis.
Right.
So it's almost like the way that they look at it is like the flu or something. Just take your medicine, and we just sustain you for the rest of your days on the earth. And I think that's the way that they look at it. And I think because the way they look at it like that, I think that's how they treat us, like that. So I don't know if it's necessarily a black or white thing, but I think that because I've heard a lot of people that have experienced the same issues with our healthcare system. It's a shame. I mean, that we care more about the people coming across the border than we care about the people that are diagnosed in our own country with sicknesses and diseases. And to me, I just have a major issue with that.
Yeah. Can I just piggyback off of what Eric just said? Because I have friends right now that will not get married because of their benefits. Like
Yeah.
they will be taken away, and that's sad.
Yeah.
That you do that, and then also the fact that insurance companies, a doctor, some doctors don't understand that MS is a snowflake disease. So, and I tell people, I'm like, hey, I could bring 1,000 people in the room right now, and we will all be different. We'll have similar
Yeah.
symptoms, but our journey is different. And it's like, I think once they understand that, um, it'll get better. But yeah, we got a long way to go. And I appreciate too that a lot of doctors are not doing the step therapy to say, okay, try this one. If that doesn't work, then go to this one, instead of just starting with the best, and if the best didn't work, then let's figure something else out. Because with MS, you can't play, with it. Like, you gotta, you treat it. And so it's like, don't wait until I have a relapse or a new lesion or new symptom to give me a better medication. Like, let me qualify for this right now. That's a big thing with even the younger people. Like, it's hard, have somebody 12 years old, 10 years old, and they're like, you can't have this medication. It's like, but they need it, type of thing. So yeah, it's just frustrating, There's a few things where it's like your color doesn't matter, but there are a lot of things where it's like, cause you're Black. So yeah,
Mhm. Yeah,
I
we're not even
totally
30
agree with
minutes
Erik.
in, and this has already been really eye-opening for me. Each of your perspectives and stories, I'm learning something new from every one of you guys. And I'm sure that those who are listening, whether on Zoom or Facebook, are feeling the same. So thank you already for what has been discussed today. So we did kind of touch on advocacy a little bit based on the answers to some of your questions before, but I just wanted to start with Dawnia. What other ways do you advocate for yourself and for others?
Yeah, so I am very involved in the MS Society as well, the National MS Society, and they have an activist advocacy program. And so I'm a district activist leader in this area. And so a couple of times a year throughout the year, if I see someone, meet with different lawmakers, your local representative, which is very important, for all of us to just build relationships with your local, representative, to say, hey, I want you to support this bill. So it's like I get to go, a couple times a year, to tell people, hey, can you support this bill? Because this will help, in this area. And so I do that a lot. And any way I could talk with somebody, I always say, I'm like, feel free to give out my number. I'm like, but if they're crazy when they call, your rights have been revoked. Like, I don't do the crazy calls, but I just think it's so important to just keep spreading awareness and fighting. What I love too is a lot of times when we're fighting for bills, and not only helps people with MS, it helps elderly, it helps other, diseases. And yeah, it's important. And so that's what I do outside of this.
And let's go with Nick.
Yeah, so I help out with Pcori.net, which is patient-centered outreach research. And I also had the opportunity last year for the first time to get involved with MS research with CDMRP, which was an amazing opportunity. And I'm also in the process of starting to get my MS nurse, which I look forward to doing. And that'll open out a lot of more doors for me to help others, that don't have the voice to help themselves. I want to really become a advocate for people that are living with MS that are not being listened to by healthcare professionals and to kind of be their voice and helping guide them through their own experience, especially when they're early on. I remember being scared myself being early on in my diagnosis and what that was going to mean to me. And I still am fairly early in my diagnosis, and it may change. My new normal may change. My life changed drastically, and it could be scary for a lot of people.
Eric,
So I hope to get more involved.
I'm sorry about that. Eric, go ahead.
First, I want to say that you guys are doing an amazing job in the community of people that are diagnosed with MS, Dawnia, and I can't remember the young man's name. But I want to thank you guys for the work that you guys are doing in the community. So basically, like I said, my wife and I, we have a ministry for people that are diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, as well as any other illnesses that people may have been diagnosed with, lupus, fibromyalgia, etc. So basically, what we do, when I first started, I wanted to provide a place for people to come where, who may not be able to get out of the house. People that are, they just look out the window all day. What do they do? People, they may be looking for people that are like-minded, who have a desire to know a little bit more, or I would say to be encouraged, or to be motivated, or so that we can inspire them and help them along the way. People that may be dealing with mental illnesses and things of that nature. Because as you know, when it comes to multiple sclerosis, it does affect your cognition. And so you have a lot of people that are dealing with different things on different levels, and not, and some people may not have family or friends or a strong support system. So we try to be that support system. Now, when we talk about our ministry, Restoring Health Ministries, we're not a church. We are. Let me say that again. We're not a church. We provide a church service on Sundays for people who may not have a place of worship. We provide, where we share words of encouragement, where we, try to motivate them, inspire them, and let them know that God still loves them in spite of. So that's one thing that we do in the community. And another thing that we do, we started this ministry called Our Health and Healing, where we host seminars every few months. We actually have one that's coming up in March, in the honor of MS Awareness Month. And we have other pastors that I know, other leaders that have been diagnosed as well, with multiple sclerosis. And so we come together and we share words of encouragement, trying to encourage people that are battling, that are diagnosed, dealing with, whatever you want to call it. So that's another thing that we do. So we have a lot of things that we do. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram. We have our own YouTube page. We also have our own 501c3, which is a nonprofit. So um, that's basically all the things that we do.
Awesome.
Can you repeat the name of your organization again, Nick, just so that they can know where to look for it?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I meant Eric. I apologize. Can you repeat the name of your organization so that they can find you on social?
It's called Restoring Health Ministries.
Got it.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, as well as YouTube.
Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
You actually just had something pop in my head right now, and I wanted to know what you guys' thoughts were as far as therapy goes. Now, I've been Black a long time, and I've heard people say, "Oh, you know, Black people don't do therapy. Like we're more likely." Clearly to open up to some family members. I say some, you know, and pastors and what have you. And I kind of feel like throughout my time here with the foundation, I've spoken to a lot of um, Black people in general have had bouts of denial and wherein they were just like not comfortable with saying, okay, I know I have this, but I just don't want to say it out loud. And it took me a while to actually get to that point. So do you guys have any thing to share on that? Let's start with Erik, because I don't think we started with you yet.
You talking about as far as
Therapy.
therapy?
Yeah.
Therapy is good. I think if you have someone who you can talk to, somebody that you can bounce off information there. If you feel as though that that they are, I don't want to say prejudging, but they're not really listening or hearing you, that may not be the right place for you. But as far as going to therapy, sometimes you need that. I've been to therapy in the past myself, as well as talking to whether it's someone who's a psychologist or someone who is a pastor or a minister or whatnot. But I think you want to be able to have that, especially again when you're diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and you have cognition problems, because sometimes it's hard for people to admit or confess that they are struggling, and I think when you get to that point, I think you really need to sit down and talk with somebody.
And I think that therapy can also look differently. Like it doesn't always have to be couch time. It can
Hmm.
be a friend. It can be, you
Yeah.
know, somebody who's standing behind you at a Starbucks, like it
Hmm.
really, it looks different for everybody, just like
Hmm.
MS. Let's go with Nick. Thoughts on therapy?
My thoughts on therapy is that it can be very beneficial, if you have the right therapist. I remember um, going to my initial therapy appointment, and I knew from that appointment that this is not a therapist I may want to continue with. But that does not mean therapy may not be for you. So my thing was, instead of giving up, to search for a therapist that I would align with me and my version of where I saw myself going with therapy. So I would encourage people that even if they've tried therapy once, maybe give it another shot with a different therapist, um, and see how that goes. I think therapy has been amazing for me. My therapist is honestly, one of the individuals that opened my eyes. And she said, "You are in the middle of a life crisis." And she said that because I was not only dealing with a um, new diagnosis of MS, my career had changed drastically. I was missing nursing and a version of what I used to do as a nurse compared to what I do now as a nurse. And I was also going through the coming to realization that my dog was going to pass soon. So I was going through multiple different things in my life that was contributing to um, depression and anxiety. And I think, African Americans it's been like this unsaid thing in the community for so long, Um, but I think it can be potentially beneficial to the people that it works for.
Dania.
I'm gonna flip your therapy question a little bit because
Mhm.
when you mentioned therapy, I thought of three things: physical therapy, occupational therapy, and mental therapy. And so, as far as physical therapy, I recommend everyone, dealing with anything with MS to go to physical therapy. And that was something that I had to fight for, where it was, I'm like, yeah, I want physical therapy. And they're like, no. And I'm like, no, I do. And so, I got the physical therapy and occupational therapy. I really didn't understand, what occupational therapy was because at the time, I'm going on disability. So I'm like occupation, okay, I'm thinking job, but it's actually life. This is how you can function in your life. And first thing I learned from an occupational therapist, because I was able to, get in the shower just fine, and then my fatigue kicks in and I'm like, oh shoot, I can't get out. And so it's, what am I going to do? And something that the occupational therapist recommended, I apologize if y'all hear that, the dog is trying to get in the room. But she told me to go from bar soap to liquid soap, and that small little change of using liquid soap was like, okay. And so, I do physical, there's the occupational therapy, like it's been helping me even like with sleeping and all of that. And then the traditional thought of therapy, when someone hears it, I think it's amazing. I think everybody should do it because we all need somebody to talk to, talk things out. And whether it's good or bad, therapy doesn't always have to be doom and gloom. And to be honest, some of my physical therapy sessions turned into therapy where we just stopped, and got it out because it was, me being frustrated with, my walking or my physical or whatever. So, I say to everybody, do all three, and just get it all together and just, look at the opportunities. And if you're with someone that doesn't do a referral for it, find somebody else, but don't let anybody tell you no or stop you. And don't be afraid to talk to people. It's healing, it's fun, it's refreshing. And like how Nick was like, first session I'm like, this ain't gonna work, so find somebody. And there's people there, there's even websites, if you want specifically a Black doctor, Black therapist and all that. So I am gung-ho of do physical, do occupational, do mental
Yeah.
therapy. So
There,
that's my
I
thought.
just I just spoke to Dr. Herb Karpatkin because I had to write an article on him, but he's a physical therapist based out of New York. And he was saying that when he first began to realize the benefits of PT and helping people with multiple sclerosis, doctors from other fields were like, I don't even refer patients to PT. And he was like, why? He's like, well, I would just wait until they're in a wheelchair. And he was like, so would you wait to prescribe a medication to them after they've relapsed, or do you want to give it to them before so that it can be prevented? And he was like, well, I would do that before. So the same applies with
Oh,
physical. It's
yeah,
just a different type of medicine. And I was
yeah.
like, that's such a good perspective. And it's true. So yes, thank you for shouting out PT, OT, all of that good stuff. You're actually kind of going into questions that I had lined up already by naming resources, and I love that. So, what have been some really helpful resources for each of you guys along your journey with MS? Let's start with Dawnia.
Yeah, so the MS Foundation website has been extremely helpful. And I will even say There's like a dance class, I've found like classes through there. So it's like Wednesdays I do the dance class, and I'm trying to, when Tai Chi is I think it's getting ready to start, but when I get that, but I love the MS Foundation, the National MS Society. I get a lot of my resources from there, and like using their navigators, and the MS AA has been helpful. I like going on YouTube, and sometimes you find, like on TikTok, there was someone with travel that was diagnosed with MS. So, I love all the social media platforms where it gives ideas, and that I'm down for the traditional way and the non-traditional way of getting information. So that's how I do it.
Eric, what about you?
You said me?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, you know, with our ministry, again, I hate to keep talking about it, but we try to provide avenues for people that will help. Like, for an example, we have a young lady who is one of our leaders, and her name is Charlena. She also was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She has a ministry. It's called Healing Dance Ministries. I don't know of anybody that's on here that's watching that's looking for something like that. But, she dances from the chair. That brings inspiration to so many. You can find her as well on YouTube and Facebook. Charlena Marie Wilson is her name, and so she provides, a dance ministry for people who have been diagnosed with MS, and she dances from the chair. She puts out videos of it's almost like liturgical dancing and things like that. So that's one thing. The other thing is being able to have a good, strong support group has really helped me out. And Charlene, this give her a shout out. And but being able to have a good, strong support system. A lot of people just don't know about having a good support system. I'm not talking about a support system where everybody's complaining. You want to be able to be somewhere where I can lay it down here on the table, and I can tell you how I'm feeling, and you can leave encouraged. And I think with our group, we have a lot of people that, and well, we try to build a family as well as we try to encourage each other. And my wife also was diagnosed with MS, and we try to encourage each other through the good days, the bad days, the strong days, the better days, the bad days, the worst days. We try to be there and encourage each other. So that has helped us out. And then being able to have family who can um, you can bounce off, things on. And it may not be every family member, and I get it. Every family member may not always understand, or may not. I'm laughing at your face, but but they don't always know. They don't always understand, and some of them really just don't want to understand. And so my thing is, why are we trying to continue to keep making them aware of something that they really just don't want to know? So my thing is, I just don't say nothing to them at all about what's going on. I would rather prefer to find people that you can add to your support system that will help you and encourage you. And sometimes being able to find people on Facebook who's going through some of the similar or same things that you're going through, it may not always necessarily be a family member. And so that right there has really encouraged me and helped me, you know, in my situation.
And
Before,
I need to add one thing to a resource because somebody in the chat just reminded me, and I don't know how the heck I didn't say that. But We Are Ill is a organization for Black women diagnosed with MS. I've been involved with it since the beginning. It has great resources. There's Black doctors there. I mean, there's support groups. There's so many things. I think the website might be weareillmatic.com, but if you look up We Are Ill, you will find it. This past year, they had a conference in Atlanta, which she brought up, which was beautiful. It was beautiful to see Black women just encouraging themselves, not having to explain anything. And I'm sure there will be one this year. They've had it for the past 2 years, but We Are Ill is an awesome organization for Black women. So please go on there if you have not, and hopefully you can go to the conference, and I hope to be there again this year.
thank
So,
you for saying that because I was just about to mention it myself. Like I saw
yeah, I was like, oh, how could I forget that?
Yes.
Bye.
I've met Victoria before. It was in 2020. I think we had done a roundtable with her,
Okay.
Dane Washington, and two others in California, and it was a really great experience. I do want to acknowledge someone in the chat said they wanted to recommend the Loveland Foundation for financial assistance with therapy for Black women. So I think that's awesome. Nick, don't believe that you answered our question. Resources have been helpful for you since your journey began?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many amazing resources out there. I remember getting diagnosed and I was still in the hospital, um, and just looking up everything I could possibly look up, online, and coming across so many different organizations like the MS Foundation. That's how I found the MS Foundation, and originally reaching out to Sherry, um, who gave amazing information to me, and she continues to help me throughout my diagnosis. And I think I was able to connect with her because she's a nurse as well, and we had that to kind of share between one another. And the National MS Society, MSAA, um, it was that those organizations were vital in me understanding everything I wanted to understand about my disease and finding support in one another. I also found community and Facebook groups and even groups on TikTok that come together to just bring awareness and to support one another. I think it's vital to have a support system that can understand exactly what you're going through. Maybe not exactly, but have an idea of what you're going through, that you can confide in. And that truly is what helped me through those troubling times when I was depressed initially, um, about the change of job and about the diagnosis. I think a part of me was going through like this grieving process of who I used to be, and trying to still understand of where I was going in my future and I was, you know, who I was becoming and how to adapt to that and to put it all back together. And it's like, who is Nick going to be now? Um, so I think that was vital for me personally. I received a lot of support from therapists as well, and also finding a neurologist that is really there to be on your team. Not not just being another number to them, and I hate to use that statistic, right? But it's you see it way too much in the healthcare field. And I felt like that before as a patient, just being another number and not having someone like dedicated to my health as much as I want to be dedicated to my health. I remember, and this goes back to kind of that, have I had discrimination in the healthcare field question that you answered or that you asked. And I remember, now that I'm talking about this, I remember that same neurologist that I made a comment about with the pain was the same neurologist. When she first saw me, told me I was going to be in a wheelchair in 10 years. And it absolutely broke me. I mean, I was probably a week after that, I was just, I was at one of my lowest points during my being diagnosed. So you want someone that is encouraging you, you know, not discouraging you. You have the opportunity to write that chapter of your life, and no one has a say so over that but you. So,
Mm. Yeah, and that goes back to advocating. If something or someone is not working for you, that doesn't necessarily mean all hope is lost. You can just find it in somebody else. So taking those steps to find your person, that's a form of advocacy as well. It's funny because simultaneously, it seems like people in the chat are having their own panel discussions.
Oh,
and
I'm
they're-
literally looking up. I was like, what kind of
they,
bike is that? So I
they,
was like looking down real quick, like, let me type
they,
it in.
they are listing resources that I have not even heard of. And we have mentioned a few organizations and a few sites that are specific to Black women. But I do want to point out therapyforblackmen.org for the men, because we don't want to forget you guys. It is highly prevalent in women, but obviously there are Black men beyond this call that are living with multiple sclerosis, and they need those resources as well. I wanted to ask about clinical trials. Why, in your opinion, do you guys think that we're not as active in that regard? Can we start with Dawnia?
Yep, that's good. I'm like, yeah, it's that Tuskegee experiment. That's in the back of everyone's mind. Definitely it was in there for me. Clinical, I think with the clinical trials, there needs to be a new perspective on them. And I believe if we did clinical trials more, that the medication would work better for Black people, because now the clinical trials are based on majority Caucasians. And so our makeup is a little different, and so I really want people to start doing that. I personally will do, which I've done, a clinical trial that does not have me alter my medication, because my medication is working for me. But like I'm doing one for blood, just taking my blood, and that's good for me because I'm diagnosed with MS. My dad is diagnosed. So, different clinical trials like that. But if I would do it, but if it's like, okay, well, you'll have to stop taking your medicine for 6 months, or you have to do this, I won't participate in it. But I think, everyone should consider clinical trials, and that's, helping advance research for MS and getting an understanding, like, where does this come from? What is similar in your genes with a parent or other family member. But yeah, I like clinical trials. I really do.
Nick, same question.
sorry, can you repeat the question? My
Sure.
brain.
No worries. It was about clinical trials. So why don't you think there is more participation from us, that the Black community?
I've heard Bincy Joy Williams talk about this, and she did a fantastic job explaining it. But me personally, I think there's a mistrust in African American community and the healthcare system in general. And when you combine, clinical trials with that, I think there's even a greater mistrust in that. Um, you know, Me personally, I think, I will in April start a clinical trial, not medication based, but device based. And if I look forward to contributing as much information as I can, and if it'll help other African Americans for sure, because we do need more representation in clinical trial data. It's just simply not enough. And, when I originally saw the numbers, I was kind of like taken back and could not believe that there were not more of us participating. And are we even being offered the opportunity to participate? Because I had to bring that up to my neurologist. So are we even given the opportunity to participate? Are they thinking about us when they think of clinical trials? And which could be another barrier that we have to kind of try to minimize in the healthcare system. But I think it could be hugely beneficial if, I forgot the website. Is it clinicaltrials.gov or someone can correct me there, but um, to look for yourself and if there's any clinical trials that you may be interested in and discussing it with your neurologist and, again, advocating for yourself, getting into these different trials. And, for me personally, I won't do anything with my medication personally because this medication is a medication I want to be on personally. But yeah, there are other trials that don't reflect changing medications that if that is the route you want to take, I definitely encourage people to look into it.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you brought up. And are we even being asked when we go see our doctors? I think that last year I read that less than 5% of clinical trial participants are with MS are Black. So that is dangerously low. And I do think that the only solution is to get out there and to ask your neurologist if they don't ask you if there are any available in your area. I do want to add, though, that if anybody on here is interested in seeing a presentation that we did last Black History Month, where we spoke directly to clinical trial participants, that is on the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation's YouTube channel. I forget the name of it, but it was from Black History Month 2023. So, Bobby, if you could put that link in the chat, that would be awesome. Erik, did you have anything to add about clinical trials?
Well, I look at it a little bit different when it comes to clinical trials, and I hope everyone understands my stance on that. When it comes to clinical trials, I really have to be in prayer, praying on which is the right ones. Because when it comes to clinical trials, to me, you really have to have some type of trust with your doctors. I say that because when I first was diagnosed with MS, I started out on what's the shot we used to take? Um, I can't think of the name of the shot, but they switched me to Plegridy, and I was on Plegridy for a while. And once I moved to New Jersey, I met with an MS specialist, and the MS specialist told me to my face that the medicine Plegridy was not for African American men. And I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yes." So he said he wanted to put me on something that was a little bit stronger, and I trusted him. So I moved on from Plegridy to I can't think of the name of that shot. Oh God,
Adamant.
Tasabri. So I started on Tasabri for about 6 months, and I was sitting down with my wife having dinner, because I noticed that when I was on Ty it was like it got me high, and then I just crashed. And when I crashed hard. It was like I took it, and maybe for like for a couple of days, I felt good, and then for the rest of the month, I just was low. Um, I had to ask for help just to walk out of the house, just to get to doctor's appointments. I fell out in the rain. I fell getting out of the bed. I fell going to the bathroom. My legs just got weak and weak and weak, and I had to have a neighbor to lift me up, to bring me in the house, to get me out of the house, to get me to the doctors and things like that. And that was all on Tysabri. And so I received a call from my doctor. They told me that I developed the JZ virus from it, and if I continue to stay on Tysabri, that I would develop PML or whatever it's called. And so he told me to stop taking it, and he wanted me to do Ocrevus, and then so currently it's been about, I guess, 3 years now that I haven't taken any MS medicine at all, and I haven't had that crash feeling. I haven't had any of those feelings. They're gone. The weakness is gone. All the things that I experienced when I was on Tysabri, it's gone. And so he wanted me to jump on the Ocrevus, and then he looked me dead in my face and told me that if you don't get it, you want to get worse. And he told me that. And so I just kindly just thanked him for his services. And I said, you know what? I'm not no test dummy. You're not going to just be testing medicines on me, because the first thing I look at is those side effects. You go in for an arm problem, then you come out with a kidney problem. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen for me. So when it comes to clinical trials, I would just suggest to everybody just to pray about it. I'm not the person to say, don't do it or do it or don't do it. Don't take this. Don't take the medicine. That's just me. So I applaud you guys for doing it. I don't look down on nobody for doing it. Like I said, I just say, just pray about it and move on from there.
Pretty much.
Can
Right.
I just ask something? I saw somebody was asking what treatments that we're all on or what we're doing. Is that some question? Because what Erik's talking about kind of ties into that with treatments. Is that a later question, or is that something that we can say?
Yeah, you can if you're comfortable with it. Erik, you have pretty much already answered that. So we can go to Dawnia, and then Nick, you can talk about your treatments.
Yeah, so my first treatment, well, first of all, I didn't know when I was first diagnosed that you should get an MS specialist. And so when I was first diagnosed, there, were the 3 medications to choose from, and then there was a pill coming out. I don't know if it was Gilenia or something else. And she's like, okay, well, here's some medications, and this is a new pill, but you might have a heart condition, after you pick. And I'm like, okay, MS and then add heart, no. And so I started on Rebif. And Rebif, I had the worst reactions. And let me say, medication works different for everybody. So I'm not knocking Rebif. No. But I literally woke up Christmas Eve and could not walk from a reaction to Rebif. And so I got off of that, and I fought to get onto Tysabri from like March to July. And it took me calling a free lawyer to finally get her to do the paperwork to get approved for the Tysabri. I was on it. It was great, but I was still progressing a little bit. And so I'm now on Ocrevus. But I'll say after my rebif, I did go to Mexico, right in Tijuana, like right across the border, and did natural treatments, and it was amazing. Like when I get the money again, I will go back to that doctor. But now I'm on Ocrevus, and it's been great. You know, being on Ocrevus the 6 months, and 6 months fly, and I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do it. But
Mhm.
for me, it's working, and I've even felt better in some instances, and just making sure I'm working out. But that's my treatment.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, so for me, just recently being diagnosed for a year now, I've only been on one treatment, which is Ocrevus, and for me, it was important to just because I was being African American, also with my symptoms, you know, starting with my leg numbness and having lesions, my cervical spine, my thoracic spine, my brain. It was important to go on like a high efficacy therapy for me, and so I was very adamant about starting on that type of therapy. And my neurologist agreed as well, and we both decided on Ocrevus, and Ocrevus personally has been great for me.
It looks like we do have a few questions in the chat and a few as well as in the Q&A. I'm not sure how all of you are on time. How much time do you guys have to spare to?
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm fine as well.
Me too. So I did want to jump into the Q&A for a second. Someone asked, what advice do you have for another who can't work and has no income and thus far is not, I guess, far enough on in their MS to be eligible for Social Security?
I'll say, when you go to your doctor's appointments, it is very, and I say from the time your last appointment to the current appointment, have a list of every single thing that has happened to you. And that way, when the doctor asks how you're doing, if you're having a good day, you don't say, good, I'm fine, but literally give them the entire list so that they can put it in your notes. Because a lot of times why people are being denied of Social Security disability is because you never said that it's not documented enough in your notes that you have these issues, whether it's bowel, bladder, walking, balance, whatever it may be. So it's really important to make sure that in your hospital notes, your doctor's notes, that they put down what's going on. So that's like my biggest thing. And for me, thank God for her, she talked with the doctors like, hey, she's going to be applying for Social Security, so make sure you put all this information in. And I literally applied one time, and within a few months I had the disability. But yeah, you definitely want to tell everything to your doctors, and then also request your notes from the doctor's office to make sure that they're documenting what's happening with you properly.
Nick, Eric, do you guys have anything to add on the subject or no?
I think that you answered it beautifully. And it may be different for different states. I'm not sure. But I think there are agencies that can help you with the paperwork and things like that to make that a little bit easier on you. That can gather the different documents that your state may need for applying for disability. So maybe look into that.
Eric?
Um, I applied in 2 different states, and the state that I actually lived in at the time, they denied me. They told me that I wasn't worse enough. That was in DC, Washington, DC. When I moved to the state of Maryland, I was approved. I would say that the person, I guess, I'm assuming that they are trying to get on Social Security. I would just encourage them just to keep applying and try to find someone that can help you through that process, because going through that process alone, it's already challenging enough that you have to deal with the MS, and then now dealing with the state on whether or not you deserve to be compensated because of MS. It's crazy. So I would encourage, that you would just find someone during the process that can help you as you go through that process of, and just keep trying, because a lot of times people get denied the first time or 2 times, but they keep pushing the papers. And then like Dawnia, I don't want to mess her name up, but like she said, you want to be able to write down some of the things that you're dealing with, so that you can have a good rapport with your doctor, so your doctor also who can advocate. And that's what helped me as well, is my doctor helped me to advocate, to help me to get Social Security.
Yeah, I like what people are saying in the chat, like, your doctor works for you, fire them. I've fortunately, as far as the doctors I remember, Dr. Mitzi Williams was my neurologist when I lived in Atlanta. When I moved back to LA, I was like, oh, I don't want to leave her. It's like I finally got this wonderful Black doctor, and now I'm gonna go back and, like, what am I gonna get? And it's been a blessing, because my neurologist here, although she's not Black, she's friends with Dr. Mitzi, and I'm like, okay, and I feel good about my care, and we have a relationship where she even comes to, like, my events and stuff like that, and I can tell her, like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, what do you think, blah blah blah. So yeah, I am down to get rid of a doctor that's not working for you.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
I'm still in the Q&A here, and someone asks, how can I, as a white person, help with changing how the system treats people of color? So anybody can answer that. It doesn't have to be.
Sorry.
Oh, y'all go ahead.
I would say just become a listening ear. Become a listening ear, and just be, and I don't want to say have a heart, but have a listening ear where you can actually hear that person, because there are a lot of people that are diagnosed with MS that are struggling, that they may look like they are $1,000,000 on the outside, but on the inside, their energy level, their, everything about them that's going on the inside is at a level 2. And so you can't always see, MS from the outside. You can judge, oh, well, whether they on the cane, oh, they have this, they got that, but you don't know the other issues, the bladder problems, and so I just suggest that you just be a listening ear, because it's not about whether or not the person is Black or white. I think you have to look at the just being able to be there for people, period, and to help people, period. and to be able to care for people, period, whether or not they're all Black or white.
Anything to add, Nick or Dawnia?
So yesterday I watched a couple of, it was on Tamron Hall. They were on her show, and the wife was getting her wedding dress. And she's a black woman, the husband's white. When she went to get her wedding dress, they charged her more for her undergarments because the regular color was nude, but as a Black woman, she had to get a different color, so they were going to charge her more. And when her fiance found out, he went off. He went on TikTok, and it was like, that's not right. And so I think, and I tell that story to say, as a, you wanting to know as a white person, how do you help is, looking for moments like that, or just looking at it differently. Like, wait a minute. So if and his thing was like, if you're white, you don't have to pay extra for the undergarments, but if you're Black, it's this much. So I think it's just, looking for opportunities of like, does that sound right to you? Or, or asking, asking the Lord God, or any situation to come about for you to go, okay, that didn't seem right. And, I don't know, it's just more so like just asking for your eyes to be opened, and even asking your friends, that are Black, like, what are some things that you experience, and even, becoming an advocate in that instance.
Right. Yeah, there are a few questions that pretty much are being answered right now as we speak in a Q&A. More people are just, how can I help, and just push more research. I really do concur that just listening, and then also knowing when to speak as well, because sometimes it's weird, because I remember hearing a story that one of our executive directors told. She had gone to the doctor with a colleague of ours who has passed away recently. Her name was Alma, but Alma was brown like us. And her doctor wouldn't even look her in the face, even though she was the one who needed treatment. He was speaking to our executive director. And she's like, no, I'm not the one who came here for your services. It's this lady. So you need to stop looking at me, look over at her. So it really is a combination of knowing when to speak up and doing so, not being afraid, because you're not going to lose anything. You're not going to die in the moment. We're in a different time. We still have a long way to go, but I think that we would get there a lot quicker if people would jump in when they saw something that they knew wasn't right, because you wouldn't want it to happen to you. So I do, gosh, these questions are coming in. I love it. I'm so glad. Lost my place here. So someone asks, what are some resources for those of us who want to be treated naturally without DMTs? If you guys have any insight there, that would be awesome.
I had said before I went to Mexico for treatment, how that came about is my sister called me. She's living here. I'm still in Georgia. And she's like, you got to come here, because my friend, her roommate, who was diagnosed with MS, has been going to this doctor in Mexico. And I'm like, okay. And so in my mind, I don't know if I'm about to go somewhere with chickens running around, or like, I don't know what to expect, like watching too many movies of like in somebody's garage and they're treating you. But it was probably one of the most beautiful experiences I had. And so it was basically, they went inside out. So I had chelation, which was an IV that they did for vitamins and minerals. Met with the doctor. He did something called a dark field test, and he literally took a drop of my blood and was able to tell me everything going on in my body that I had to have an MRI here for them to tell me. It was kind of crazy because it was so small. And then it was like a magnet therapy where they put magnets on my body to balance it out. A foot detox was another treatment, but then also you met with a nutritionist. And just getting rid of like all the processed stuff and doing that. But there's also and this is after Mexico, but to do like breathing techniques, exercising is a good therapy or treatment. The meditation, doing mindfulness, and so yeah, I'm all for the natural.
Where in Mexico, Dawnia?
Right in Tijuana, like 2 hours. Well, literally less than 10 minutes across the border. And there was actually a medical van that would come, and there were people from all over the country that were going there, and they like picked us up in San Diego and drove us across the border and drove us back. And like with the medical bus or medical van, there were certain areas we didn't have to wait, so it was a little faster, but it was right across, and people were going down there, whether MS, some people went to the dentist, some were there for weight loss, some for cancer, for AIDS. So it was all types of treatments down there, but I loved it. Loved my doctor. He was good, and I felt better. Say that again.
Who was your doctor? You don't mind?
Yeah, no, it's Dr. Calzada. Yeah.
Because someone in the chat was like, "Who's the doctor? Where in Mexico?"
Yeah. Well, look, my Instagram is Dawnia Marie. So if you want to inbox me, I am down to share, pass along my number to you if you want to talk. But I like natural treatment. And only stopped going because I didn't get a job that I thought I was going to get because I got confused in a question, and it was pretty much guaranteed, but wound up, eventually being on disability. But if I get I get the money again, I am down there in a heartbeat. So, and I love that his sons are a part of it as well.
Going into a question that came up as well, someone wants to know how you guys are managing the financial costs of MS, and they say that there's a chance they may lose insurance and they're afraid. Whoever wants to start, it's okay.
I know, I just can't think off the top of my head. I know the drug programs have different assistant programs for people that make under a certain amount. It's, based on what drug company. Like for me, I'm an Ocrevus, so it would be Genentech. And originally I did not have insurance when I got diagnosed. So I was on Genentech's program to help cover the cost of the medication. I think a lot of drug companies do have that program. So I would definitely look into that. That would be my advice.
Any advice, Erik, or no?
Say that question one more time.
They wanted to know how you guys were managing your finances as far as paying for MS treatment, and that they could be in danger of losing their insurance.
So that's kind of tough because I have insurance, and I have insurance through my wife as well. So I guess the one thing that I would probably say, maybe you can talk to a family member who may can add you onto their insurance until you're able to get some insurance on your own. That may be something to think about.
Yeah, I actually have an answer from someone in the Q&A. They said, um, find out if your DMT has a patient assistance program. So whoever it was, the anonymous attendee that asked about paying for MS treatment, look into that. It said most DMT programs will provide medication for free or at a low cost. So thank you, Regina, for dropping that in the chat. We only have
Real
maybe
quick, I was just gonna say, I just put in Mark Cuban created a website, drug company. Their medications are so much cheaper on there. So the costplusdrugs.com/medications is really good. And I would say if you have access, the MS Society has MS navigators where they can help with insurance. I personally am on Medi-Cal and Medicare. So that's how my insurance is going. I don't know how old you are, but they may have resources. The MS Navigator, and it's the 800 Fight MS to tell you about ways that you can get your medication treatment and all of that.
did you say 800 fight MS?
Fight MS, 1-800 Fight MS, and you ask for an MS Navigator. Yeah, and I am a bigger Mark Cuban fan for creating that drug site to get medication cheaper. Or if someone just went from paying almost $30,000 for a few months of their medication down to $30. So yeah, they're doing what everybody should be doing.
So Bernita asks, what are some resources for MS exercise or food? That's kind of, I feel like, a little bit of a tricky question, and one that can go all over the place because there is no specific diet that any one person with MS can follow and it'll just cure everything. And so you hear a lot of dietitians say that, and everybody's cases again are different. So I guess anything general that has worked for the three of you?
Yeah, oddly enough, I finally saw an MS program say the Mediterranean diet has been great. I personally am a pescatarian, but I've renamed it Pescagen because I try to go majority vegan, but add fish to it. And that's been helpful for me. But you know, the raw, I've done better with the raw diet than anything, and so try to stay away from processed stuff.
Erik?
Yeah, I would probably say just you may want to connect with your insurance company as well, because sometimes they have people that are on there who can help, suggest diets and things like that. I mean, there's so many different diets that's out here. There's not, any diet that's gonna just wipe MS away. So, it all depends on what you're trying to do, physically as well.
Nick, anything to add?
Definitely anti-inflammatory diets. There's a ton out there. I try to eliminate as much processed foods as possible and added sugars as possible. That would be my recommendation.
Do either of you, or do the three of you know anything about cannabis use in helping MS? Someone's asking about that.
To be very honest, for my dad, it has been very helpful, and I always joke, I'm like, if I could literally attach a blunt to my dad's mouth and he just push a button, and because it really helps him, but I haven't used it, but I am all for it, is natural, type of thing. I'm not a big fan of like the vape pens and stuff, because you got all this stuff adding to it, but the people that I know that do it, it's amazing. So I'm all for it, yeah.
Nick or Eric?
For me, I use CBD cream on my legs. I have that burning leg pain. And CBD cream seems to calm it down.
Eric?
Me personally, I don't use any of that.
Yeah. Someone says if they use cannibals, use edibles. I don't use it either, so foreign to me.
I don't use it, but to the people that do, I'm like, go for it. But I see how it helps my dad with his spasticity. And so I'm like, by all means, have your medical marijuana, and, there you go.
Yeah. Someone dropped a resource in the Q&A. It says for folks interested in reading more about trial focused on the Black and Hispanic people with MS, there's gene.com. So you guys can definitely check that out. GENE.com. Awesome. So we are actually about to wrap up here. This has been so helpful for me, just listening again to your stories. And I'm glad that we were able to find time to get the questions answered from Q&A and from chat. It's been a little hard to navigate because there are people just coming in at once, but I don't think that this topic can be talked about enough. So I do want to thank you guys so much for your time. Before we let you go, is there anything that you guys would share about your experiences? Like, for instance, if you could tell yourself something now that you wish you knew when you were first diagnosed, what would you say? Eric, let's start with you.
Mm. Ooh, that's a good question. If I had, so when I first was diagnosed, I had no clue what MS was. I didn't know anybody that was a part of my life at the time that was diagnosed. I found out the same year that I was diagnosed that I was the fifth person in my family that was diagnosed. I didn't really have it, like I said, an understanding. But better yet, I couldn't even spell multiple sclerosis. Just trying to have an understanding of the disease, and as well as trying to explain something that I did not understand myself was a challenge. So I guess if I had to say something to my younger self, it would be more this: connect with people that have an understanding and that can walk with you. So as you go through the process, you have a better understanding of knowing what to expect, because it's definitely an unknown position that that we walk in on a daily basis, not knowing what to expect tomorrow, not knowing what to expect the day after that, because of the challenges of MS. And so I leave that with everyone. Also,
Eric?
can I say this also? I'm sorry, I just had to look down on my Facebook and I see some people tried to follow me on the Restoring Health Ministries Facebook page. If you inbox me and connect with Erik Nelson, and then I will send you the link to join Restoring Health Ministries.
Can you spell your name too? Because you don't spell it the traditional way.
It's
Eric.
Erik Nelson.
Nick, so same question. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you were first diagnosed, and what would you share with everybody else?
You know, I would share with that older version of, well, that younger version of myself, that, you know, things do equal out, you know. Um, you'll learn more, you'll gather more information, you'll become an advocate for people that, can't advocate for themselves. Um, it'll become a voice for the African American community of individuals living with MS. And you'll find a purpose in that. I know right now it feels like your purpose is being taken away from you within nursing, but you find a purpose in helping others in a different way. And I just want to leave a statement for everyone here that's listening. Always advocate for yourself, advocate for who you are and what you believe in, as far as what is going on with your body, and never give up with looking for answers, and looking for a doctor that will help you find those answers. um it's frustrating at times, but go easy on yourself and find people around you that will support you in finding answers.
Dawnia, same question.
So to tell myself from back then, I would say, eat right, exercise and stick to a treatment. That is probably the best thing that I would tell myself. And that is gonna be okay. You just gotta keep pushing. But yeah, I beat myself up sometimes that I didn't, excuse me, that I didn't do certain things consistently. But yeah, that is my advice. Like, eat right, exercise, and stick to a treatment, whether it's natural or you're gonna do a traditional drug, then yeah, that's it. And thank you so much. You've been amazing, and I've enjoyed this space. I always love talking about MS and learning new things. And yeah, I'm like, can we get a page of all the resources? Like, just, share it with everyone, because I'm like trying to look down and not be rude, but I'm like, what does that say? So
Mhm.
Listen, I have been doing the same thing to kind of make sure that no question has been left behind. And I'm not wearing my glasses, so I don't know who I'm trying to fool. But but I think that we have covered so much within the time. I personally don't even mind going over, because I think that, again, it needs to be discussed. Like, there are people out there, they don't have these resources. Some people are newly diagnosed and they don't have the education, so they come here for that. So you can't put a time limit on that. So, and your perspectives have really made the night. So thank you guys so much. I did have one more question. And as soon as I find it, that would be awesome. Once again, navigating with blurry vision.
Mhm.
Um, so, okay, yeah. And I think this question actually came from you, Dawnia, one that you sent through email. But what area do you guys think needs improvement when it comes to treating Black people who are diagnosed with MS? So we can start with Erik, and then we'll go to Dawnia and Nick.
Wow, what areas needs to improve
right.
Or
in
like,
the Black community? Um, I'm just gonna jump out and just say it. I think, for me, I think family. I think there's a big um divide when it comes to family. Trying to get them to understand where I am, what's going on, and realizing that they don't have PH, in front of their name, or they're not doctors. So they, like, for an example, we laugh at my mom because one of the things that she used to always say, well, her and my father was big on, that big green bottle of alcohol when we were growing up. So they swear up and down that if you just rub your legs with some alcohol, and I'm like, you can't put alcohol on the nerve.
Right.
So trying to get them to understand, trying to get them to um understand where you are mentally and as well as physically, and they really don't have no clue themselves. And sometimes they may ask stupid questions. I'm just gonna say it like that. Sometimes they may ask those crazy questions. Sometimes they may not always understand. Again, one of the things that I've learned is that I don't try to focus on the people that don't want to really be there in your life. I try to focus on the people that want to be there. I was married before, and one of the things that I told my ex-wife was that everybody can't go where God is taking you. And not knowing why I said that, but this had nothing to do with, anything spiritual, but she could not have an understanding of why I couldn't do certain things. And because, I mean, I'm pretty sure you understand, as a man, um you just, MS makes you lose your manhood. And it's like things that, like taking out the trash, being there for your wife, doing certain things. It's a challenge, and trying to get people to understand that there is a challenge that's going on. It's tough. So I would just try to find family and people that have a understand, or that want to understand. Let me just say it like that.
Nick.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Eric, for that laugh with the alcohol. My mom actually said that to me like maybe 2, 3 weeks ago. She's like, why don't you put some alcohol in your back? Because I was just saying that my back was hurting, and that gave me a good laugh. Um, you know, sorry, I don't even remember the question.
No, it's fine. I have to tell you, I don't know, maybe I don't want to say this, but sometimes I really just feel like it's a Black thing, and whoever understands it understands it. My great grandmother would rub me down with alcohol every night, and I was like, I don't know
Mhm.
why we have to, why do I need this? Or go get she would pronounce things wrong all the time because she was Southern and just had,
Yeah.
whatever. So she would like, go get the citric magnesia. I'm like, the what?
Oh,
Like
God.
this stuff. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah,
That stuff
so
is nasty.
it was, you know what? I kind of liked it. I don't know why, but
Oh my gosh. Like you,
Very soothing.
like you was drinking chalk.
sometimes I would play like I was sick, like, oh God, my stomach hurts, and then regret it soon after. But the question, the question, Nick, was what do you think needs improvement when it comes to treating Black people diagnosed with MS? So
What needs improvement? Definitely clinical trial data. Um, Also, medical research papers um, on how MS is impacting African Americans. I think it needs to be researched more. Um, I think it needs to, which we are seeing, I think, a gap, closing the gap in the diagnosis of African Americans with MS, because I remember looking at like what is contributing to the factors of African Americans not being diagnosed, you know, and finding out that, African American women were like the most diagnosed. And when did that change happen? When was that pivot? And was it because that we were just simply ignored originally when we would present as symptoms because it was always assumed to be very Caucasian woman-based disease? Um, I think that is, you know, closing. That gap is closing. There's more awareness being out there to reach the audience that needs to be um, for the audience that needs to be reached about it. I think the more we talk about it, the more awareness that each and every one of us can get, we can bring that to the Black community. That this is a disease that's prevalent in our community that needs to be addressed. So, if you are having these type of symptoms, that may be something to discuss with your neurologist. That may not initially think about that. You know. So I think that will definitely help the Black community with living with MS and the ones that are undiagnosed that are living with this type of symptoms.
Mhm.
Dawnia?
Yeah, I was seeing in the chat, someone said more Black MS specialists, more Black MS
I was
researchers,
about to say
but I'm
that.
gonna add more Black doctors, period. Because that I think we'll get further along if we have someone that's advocating for us. And no knock to any other race doctor, but sorry, we're having an earthquake right now. Yeah, so but yeah, it's not, sorry, that threw me off. But it's just important to have more Black resources and to have doctors prescribe different things like I was talking about with the therapies, with the occupational therapy, mental therapy, and so on. But yeah, that is how I think that we can improve as far as the doctor's treatments, and then also with family members, um, them understanding. Because when I was first diagnosed, my family's like, "How long till the wheelchair?" It's like that's not how it works. Kind of like the lady that didn't understand Facebook, like I unfriend you and on the wall. So with my family, just helping them understand, and people, period, and friends. I don't want to just say family, but family and friends, having an understanding and communicating, and like for us to really speak up of what's going on. So yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, and the earthquake, yeah, just so that y'all know, it's just a little shake right now, but I'm okay. But yeah, my number one reason for not wanting to move back here was earthquakes, and so yeah, but I'm good. I'm shaking inside, but I'm good because I'm like, is it gonna keep going or is it gonna stop? So I'm just like, focus, focus, focus. So
Where
yeah,
where
thank
where are
you.
you at?
I'm in Compton.
Oh, okay.
Compton, Cali, raised in Inglewood, lived in Atlanta, but back in LA. So,
Okay.
I
so
want
I'm
to
okay.
acknowledge Michael, who has his hand raised, and if I'm not mistaken, raised his hand a while ago and then it went down. So Michael, can you unmute?
Hit. I've actually hit the raise your hand. I am so sorry. I
Oh,
enjoyed it. I enjoyed the seminar, but I've actually raised it. I didn't know what kind of seminar it was. My wife is all into my MS, and I'm still going through the acceptance portion, and still fighting and trying this and trying that, and trying to deal with it like I can get over this hump unscathed, because in my past years, I never got sick. I never got ill. I was able to do that. So when MS hit me, it rocked me, and I still haven't embraced it and kind of bowed down to the fact that I'm a changed individual. Um, and you know, it changed my life. It rocked my life. You know, being married, you don't think when you get married that you'll, when you say for better or for worse, that you'll ever have to live up to that. So when my wife did, it's inspiring and it helps get me through, but it doesn't make me feel any better. It just makes me, um, want to, put it this way. I got to the point where I couldn't even walk, and I still didn't want to accept it. And I was so changed financially, spiritually, emotionally, just all across the board. So, you know, she has been the one advocating for me, saying I need to talk to people and to see what other people are going through. But I'm still at the stage where I'm just in the acceptance part. So that's where I come out.
Mm.
I hope that this has been helpful for you, Michael, because there is community here. As you have seen, if you've been here for a while, as community and
Absolutely.
as community among the panelists, we're all here to help.
That's right.
Obviously, just add presence. Nobody is alone in their journey. I think that's a mind game, something
Mhm.
that we kind of tell ourselves, or nobody's going through what I'm going through. I'm alone in this. You're never alone. There are people out there who share similar experience and they can help you and you learn from them. And eventually your walk will become stronger. You'll get your stride back for sure. So I do hope that this has been helpful for you.
Can I,
Absolutely.
you're gonna say really quick too, it's encouraging to hear the spouses,
Mhm.
that are there for people, diagnosed with MS, because I'm single and I'm like, okay, I know my husband is born, but all that, but it's just like, like praying that, he has that understanding, that sensitivity, and, being able to stay there. So I appreciate those with spouses that did not run from a diagnosis. So, because I hear both sides. And yeah, so I'm excited about that day where it's like, okay, remember I was praying for you and now you act right. So, yeah, but yeah. So kudos to the spouses.
Yes. Before we go, I did want to just bring up to anybody who's still listening, whether on Facebook here on Zoom, but the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation's YouTube channel is another great resource that does highlight the Black experience as far as multiple sclerosis is concerned. So, for the past 4 years, there has been a number of webinars by, I think Mitzi Williams has done some for us. Dr. Tirashim Yang has hosted webinars, Dr. Kalina Sanders. And we actually, before the month is over, we are going to have a neurologist perspective, a Black neurologist perspective on multiple sclerosis. And Dr. Yang will be there, Dr. Jacqueline Rosenthal, Dr. Jacquet Nolan, who also has MS and she is a neurologist. So that will be this month on the 20th, I believe. I forget the time, but you can go to msfocus.org and click on the events tab and you'll find that information there. So you guys can register for that as well. But yeah, I guess that brings us to the end. And I could go on and talk about this, but I know we all have lives. So I think that I'll close it out here. But if you did miss any part of the conference, it will be available to look at again on the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation's Facebook page. So after we close out the Zoom here, The live stream will have, finished processing, and then you can just watch it from the beginning if you have missed anything. Our next conference will be on Tuesday, the 13th at 4:30 p.m. with Dr. Ben Thrower. And he'll be discussing making life easier through technology. I'd say in about a week or so, this conference, the one that we're in now, will also be on the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation's YouTube channel. So it won't just be on our Facebook page. We do want to acknowledge once again our sponsor who helped make this event possible, Genentech. Sorry, we don't have the slide to show the logo. Please forgive us. But we acknowledge you and we thank you for your support. And again, thank you guys for participating in the chat. I feel like we had 2 panel discussions at once, and I feel like everybody got a lot of resources. So Dawnia, Nick, Eric, guys, thank you, because we would not have been able to do this without your voices, your thoughts, just everything was perfect. And I hope we can do this again.
Thank you so much. And I
Yeah,
would
thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.